Welcome to Industry Ignited, where we spotlight leaders solving real-world problems with practical innovation. I'm your host, Dr. Leeanne Aguilar. Today, I'm joined by LaToya Hinton-Howery, MPH, CEO, and Research Director of Next Innovative Clinical Research, who's leading inclusive clinical trials across the country and building pipelines of talent and trust through the Next ICR Foundation and the NOR Research Collective. We'll talk about bringing high-quality research directly into underserved communities and why representation in trials isn't optional, it's essential. LaToya, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you?
I am good. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Great, thanks for having me.
So, LaToya, take us back to 2015. What moment made you say, I have to build a different kind of research site?
In 2015, I was actually working at the University of Chicago that time, and I noticed how they did research. My background, I had about 2 years of research experience prior to coming to the University of Chicago. It was an independent research site, and I saw how things could be done in a smaller setting, where things were more independent, less university, less on a smaller scale. And in 2015, I wanted to mesh those two worlds where we were able to reach diverse populations, but it was a smaller setting where people were allowed the time and the space to ask questions when they were, coming into a world of research which they didn't know anything about. So it was just the mindset of, I think the key thing was being inclusive of minority physicians. So that's when I sought out to find doctors who were minority that had access to the population to see if they were interested in conducting clinical trials.
Okay. Yeah, and I know you noticed few, if any, Black investigators or participants at early investigator meetings. How did that gap show up in patient outcomes or trust?
So pretty much at both of the smaller research site that I worked at and University of Chicago, what I noticed is that there was a lack of diversity of patients participating in the trials. Both of these facilities were in Chicago. University of Chicago is in the middle of a minority population. And it was just surprising that either we were having low enrollment or the people that did enroll weren't minorities. And I'm like, this is really odd. This is really odd. And I would notice, like, at investigator meetings, there weren't any minority doctors. And my thought was, that's the key right there, because I'm figuring if the issue is right in my own backyard and I am in the community, I'm sure other locations is having the same issue with the lack of minority participation in clinical trials.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it just, that whole awareness came to light.
Yeah.
And yeah, you thought you'd step in and figure it out why it was happening and take action.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So COVID brought clinical trials into public conversation. What did people get right and what did they misunderstand about how vaccines and treatments are actually studied?
So COVID was really interesting in my world because a lot of people knew that I was involved in clinical research, but they didn't know exactly what I was doing. So when COVID came about and the vaccine was there, it was a lot of, I'm not taking that medication. They just pulled it out of nowhere, and we don't know if it's harmful or not. But trying to explain to people, that's when the conversation began about what clinical trials are and what the process is, and that COVID wasn't a new virus. People thought that COVID was new and that this vaccine, they just started working on it yesterday and now they want us to take this vaccine. It's like, no. So that's when it came about of doing more education amongst my own family first. And then when other people would reach out and say, hey, I have a question or I have the opportunity for the vaccine trial, what should I do? So, that just opened the door for more conversation.
Okay, right. It's like people all of a sudden were aware, I
Yeah.
think, of what clinical trials even were. I think it brought a lot of awareness, and then with awareness comes the opportunity, and then education,
Yes.
obviously follows after that. For listeners new to research, what does inclusive trials really look like in practice?
So inclusive trials mean inclusive of all races, inclusive of men and women, because I want to say women just started being allowed to participate in clinical trials in 1993, which is absolutely crazy. So
Astounding, right? I knew half of the population was excluded from trials before then, which is, I know, when I found that out, it was like mind blowing, right?
yeah, it's like one of the craziest things. It's like, how is that so? How is it that medications have been on the market, and we haven't been allowed to participate in trials. And it's not even allowed, it's like access, being told that these trials are even available. And
Right.
that's where, we stand in the gap now, where it's like letting people know what trials are available and where, and that they are able to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because even between men and women, we're biologically very different. So without trials, it's how do you know that, the medication is going to impact that,
Yeah,
the population a certain way? And I
yeah,
think it goes with any population of people. There are differences and we don't want to ignore those. We have to address them in order to make sure that we're effectively treating them and
correct.
the patients are getting the right care. You train community members and as research coordinators. What changes when staff come from the neighborhoods you serve?
So that's like, I want to say one of the, I don't want to say the most mind blowing thing that's ever occurred during my career. So, what I have found is that throughout my career of research, how comfortable people of color, that ask questions about clinical research, clinical trials. When I'm doing community events, and I'm speaking to people, and they're like, "Oh wow, I never knew that I could participate in this. I never knew what a clinical trial was. I didn't even know how medication got on the market. I never thought about that process."
Mm.
So when I'm in the community and I'm speaking to them, and they're like, one of the first things, "Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm from up the street. I went to CVS High School, and my office is right in Bronzeville." And they're like, "Oh wow, seriously?" So when I'm training other people, what happens is they educate their family. So this is family members that I may not have had conversations with. And it's like a cycle where I'm educating, new people in the community of clinical research, how to be a coordinator, what's needed, what's good clinical practices, how to read a protocol, explaining the consenting process. And then they're like, "Oh, wow, this is amazing." And they're telling their friends and they're telling their families. And now that's more people that's learning about clinical trials and wanting to participate. Because very seldom do I get a no, I don't want to participate in that. And a lot of times I get, "Do you have a diabetes trial? Do you have a gout trial?" They ask me for different trials and
Ah,
saying, "Call me when you have this because I would love to participate."
right. Yeah. So that makes sense, though. It's like if you can relate to people, especially if you have mutual, I mean, connections, or that you, like you said, went to the same school or from the same area of town, then you have there's kind of an automatic sense of trust
Yes.
that's built, right? So talk to me more about that trust building with older adults who worry about being the guinea pigs. How do you reframe that conversation, and what safeguards exist today that didn't in the past?
So with the older population, and this population is a little bit tricky because they're the ones who remember Tuskegee and they ask those questions about being a guinea pig. And so when people bring up guinea pig and they want to go or walk along the lines of guinea pig, I have to say, well, if you want to look at it that way, then you're already a guinea pig. I say because your doctor doesn't know how the medication that you're currently taking, how it's going to work in you. So I
Mm,
always ask them, "What medications are you taking right now?" And they'll tell me, and I'm like, "Okay, what's in your losartan? Who was it tried on? How long was the trial?" Like, I'll start asking those questions and they don't know. And I said, let's flip it. Let's say you're in a clinical trial and you're a part of an investigational medication. I said, first of all, you will have time to ask the doctor questions. For our screening visits, we allow the patient, schedule it for 3 hours so that the patient has enough time to talk to the doctor, ask the coordinator questions, read through the consent form, make sure they're well informed of what they're doing. And then once they're on the drug, of course, if anything happens, they come back to the office. They see the doctor. We pay them for their visit. Either we put them on a rescue med or we send them to the ER. Whatever the case may be, they have one-on-one attention. Whereas if they're taking a medication at their doctor that's already on the market, they have to pay their copay to see the doctor. They're paying their copay to get that medication. If it doesn't work or if they have a reaction, they have to pay to come back to see the doctor, or they have to pay to go to the ER. So why do all of that when you can come to us? We hold your hand through the whole process, and then you get one-on-one attention, and we compensate you for your time and travel.
wow.
And that
Yeah.
gets them to thinking like, okay, the process of the actual drug is the same, because in all honesty, no patient knows exactly what's in their medication. Nobody's
Mhm.
going to Google and say, "All right, what's the formula on this drug?" They're
Right.
trusting what the doctor knows.
Yeah.
trust our doctors because again, they're sitting through trainings. We have the formula of the drug. We know what the potential side effects are. We're looking for more. We want to make sure that the medication works. But if by chance something happens, we're going to hold your hand the whole way through. We're
Right.
not going to say, "Sorry, Miss
Yes.
Johnson, you're on your
Right.
own."
No,
So,
that's a really good point. Yeah. So it's like they're getting one-on-one specialized care. They're being, I mean, all the questions answered, all the, uh, you're walking them through the entire process. And not only that, but at the end of the day, they're providing information for research that will lead to helping other people in the same, demographic,
yeah.
that has the same kind of, providing that insight into helping other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's interesting though. I mean, because yeah, how well the research is out there. I mean, studies are publicly available. You can go out and, Google Scholar or whatever and look into studies and look at who the they were researching, who the
Yeah.
test participants were. That's all available. But you're
Yes.
right. How many people actually go in and say, you know, who who was, who did they test? Was the population somebody like me? Was it the same age group? Was it the same, you know, gender, whatever? And what were the outcomes? How many people actually do that? We're
Yeah.
just blindly trusting that the medications that our doctors are giving us have been, thoroughly tested. And honestly, I've talked to many doctors and they don't even know that much about the
They
actual
don't. They
medication.
don't.
No. Yeah, they're have a little bit of training or maybe a presentation by the pharmaceutical rep in many cases, but they don't know the formulations. They don't know
Yeah.
what goes into the medicine. They don't know what trials were,
Yeah.
um, you know,
And
undertaken.
they get stuck on the medication and they just prescribe that one medication over and over and over again. And they're like, "Oh, we had some good feedback from patients for this, so we're going to keep prescribing it." But what if all of a sudden that drug just stops working? Like lisinopril. Lisinopril is one of those drugs that was highly prescribed for high blood pressure, and then all of a sudden, a lot of African Americans start having adverse events and ending in the hospital for that drug. And it's like really odd because it could have been working. Like I could have been taking lisinopril and it worked perfectly fine for me, but somebody next town over could be like, "Oh no, I had an allergic reaction and this happened and the same thing happened to my dad." But then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you look at the trial and you're like, "Okay, I see."
Yeah, yeah. And the trials are typically, I mean, they're repeated several times, right? Or it's over a longer period of time. And so you
Yeah.
have multiple data points for the same constituents,
Yeah, you
right?
have multiple data points, but when you don't have multiple data points from different groups, then you're going to
Yeah.
keep having the same data points.
Right, exactly. Okay. So you're multi-specialty by design. Current or recent studies include endometriosis and fibroids, lupus, and rheumatoid arthritis, asthma, heart failure prevention, and ulcerative colitis. Why is breadth important for community engagement?
Because especially within our department in our small office, we want to have like a variety of different things, especially because a lot of times when things are offered at the university, at larger institutions, people are less likely to participate. So we want to have a variety of things so that we can try to cover a variety of things and not try to get locked into one box, because I almost got locked into one box because women's health trials are my absolute favorite. I love fibroid and endometriosis trials. I was like a whiz in those trials. I worked with multiple pharmaceutical companies for the same indication, and people would just start calling me about their fibroids and endometriosis. But it's like when you ride the wave of what's popular, and women's health was popular at one point in time, and now it's very difficult to find a women's health trial right now. So it's like you want to be able to
Oh,
offer a variety of things because you don't know exactly what's going to affect the community. Like, I didn't know that asthma was as big as it is, but of course, hypertension and diabetes are two, obesity, three, chronic kidney disease, that's four. So, being able to work multi specialty and then being able to train people on these multi specialty things, because that will, make them stronger for if I open up another site, somewhere else, and I can say, "Hey, we're going to make this site the lupus site. I'll send my coordinator over there, or we're going to focus on asthma at this location," so that we
mhm.
can make sure that our coordinators are well versed in all these different trials too. Because even though I'll say once you do one protocol, you could do they're pretty much all the same, but sometimes there's little special nuances in between them that say, "All right, you need to learn a little bit of a specialty of it."
Right. Yeah. So, do you find there are trends in what people are researching?
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess that makes sense too, because one research project will lead to another research project, and people who are working on one research project will then extend their research and look at it and test different variables. So,
And
yeah,
then
that
it's
makes sense.
popular, whatever's popular, whatever in the news. So at one point in time, of course, it was COVID vaccines and COVID treatments. And now that COVID is being treated like it's just the flu, nobody's talking about treatment for COVID, but
Right.
everybody's talking about Ozempic.
Yeah.
Everybody wants weight loss, so now we're figuring out, the different studies. Can we do it without? Can we do without the shot? Can it be oral? Making sure this is available for people outside of the ones that have diabetes. Now we're looking at the side effects because people are talking about, paralysis in their stomach, all different kind of things. So it's these different kind of trials because Ozempic and those weight loss drugs is what's popular right
It's
now.
what's popular. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
trending. It's at the forefront of the research and the
Yeah.
attention. So once that kind of wanes, it goes away, then something else will. So staying flexible so you're able to respond to the needs of the research and
Yep.
the community. Yeah. How do you recruit ethically and effectively? Like community events, local organizational partnerships, physician education, and what message resonates most?
So everywhere, I recruit everywhere. Even when I was at a community meeting for the housing unit that I live in, complex that I live in, and I was there talking about clinical research. So I'm always recruiting, but community events seem to be really, really good because once I have a group of people there and I'm talking to them, other people will come around like, okay, what are they talking about at this table?
Yeah.
And so that's why I really love community events because I'm able to, capture people's attention in small groups. I also do several events where I have a platform where I'm able to talk to a group of people at one time about research and able to talk to them afterwards off to the side about things that different, like I say, different trends, educating them on trials, what's the difference between now and Tuskegee, and then also having a platform to educate doctors. I actually just recently won a grant with Pfizer that's educating doctors on sickle cell. Now, although I've never done a sickle cell trial, that's the importance of knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know. Connected with an organization that is, super educated on sickle cell, and then I come in at the end and then educate on research because of
Mhm.
these doctors who are really wanting to know about sickle cell, want to know different treatments about sickle cell. How about being a physician to conduct clinical trials, and here's how you can do it. Here's the pharma companies that's in the forefront of sickle cell. So just educating them and getting them comfortable about talking about clinical trials so that they can talk to their patients about clinical trials.
Yeah. Right. So your process, are you first going to are you going to the university first and talking to the staff there? I mean, how are you finding out about the trials that are up and coming and what the needs are?
So not the university. So first, LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been my friend since the very beginning. That's how I actually got my first couple of trials by introducing myself to people on LinkedIn and letting them know I have a site. But just getting more familiar with the different sponsors, building relationships with different CROs, and when I have a need, like I'm opening a site in St. Thomas and also Los Angeles, and going to them and say, "Hey, I'm working with this specialist. Oncology is in St. Thomas," and saying, we're looking for trials. What do I need to do? Although sometimes, well, not even sometimes, all of the newer doctors that I've worked with have been research naive. So I'll go to the sponsor and say, "Hey, I'm working with this research naive physician," but even though the doctor may not have a lot of research experience, I do. My
Uh-huh.
coordinators do. So we're able to hold the doctor's hands throughout the process. So I'm actually working with a research naive physician for a lupus trial. And it has been a process because some doctors are, really with it, and some are like, "Okay, walk me through this again. Make sure I understand this." And I'll tell you that the sponsor said they only gave me the trial because I had experience, because I had a relationship with them, and they
Right.
knew that I would see it all the way through, which of course I will.
Yeah.
Make sure that the patients, know what they need to know, the doctor knows what he needs to know, and he's getting this training because it helps the sponsor because they're getting a different pool of patients that they didn't have access to before, and they're getting access to a newer doctor that's up and coming in research. So the first study may be a little rocky. It's a learning curve, but that second one, he'll be on it. So
Hmm.
that's the advantage so that the sponsors won't keep going to the same practices over and over again.
Right. Okay. So they get like a wider range of data from a wider pool of doctors as well as different communities as well, which
Yeah.
makes sense. You don't want all of your research coming out of the same pool of people over and over again. How does inclusion improve data quality and real world relevance for new therapies?
Because we make sure that the drug works. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line because we want to make sure that the drug works because the DNA is different in different races. We want to make sure that if we're trying to asthma medication in Chicago in our climate with African Americans, with Asian population, with Hispanics, that is working with the people that's in Arizona where the climate is different. Like we want,
Yeah.
and it's not even the diversity of the ethnic groups and genders is the spaces, the communities, because again, our climate is different. That's one thing with a lot of different trials. Our lifestyles are different. So
Yeah.
it's like you want to get a diverse pool of everything possible, anything that you can think of. Because
Right.
you would think of
Yeah.
lifestyles and you're like, oh, asthma is asthma. No, you have people that are more of a smokers in one group than another. Again, climate could be
Yeah,
a
or
thing.
elevation. Somebody in a mountain, it's going to have a different reaction because there's lower oxygen level, for
Yeah, so you want to
example.
test it on everything because you're not just selling the drug to one group of people or to one region. You're selling it to everybody, so you want to make sure that it works.
Yeah, that makes sense. You've cited examples like lisinopril reactions in Black patients. Why does representation in safety and efficacy data change prescribing and outcomes?
It changes because um I would say that exchanges and representation matters because we don't want this is where it comes into play with health disparities, where people will say, my cousin took this drug. It did this to her. I'm not going to take it. So if we have a group of people saying, I'm not going to take this drug because it affected my loved one this way, then you have a community of people that have a lot of high blood pressure. Then comes diabetes and then comes kidney disease.
Yeah,
So that increases health disparities when we don't have the representation of drug that actually works because bad news spreads faster than good news.
that's
and
the truth.
and
Yes.
if it's a group of people saying, yeah, like they'll get on Facebook, like that's where I first saw it, on Facebook, that this drug isn't working. And a lot of people, yeah, because this happened to my uncle and this happened to my dad. And it's like, oh wow. And it's like, I'm not taking that, I'm just going to use natural things. And I'm all for natural herbs and things, but I work in the pharmaceutical industry, so I know that it's a little bit more effective, not even a little bit, it's more effective than the natural things because a lot of people will say, I'm going to do natural, I'm going to work out, I'm going to eat differently, and it doesn't work out the way that they plan. I know
No, yeah,
firsthand,
yeah.
my dad actually passed away from heart failure. And I remember calling him and he was talking, complaining about his medication, saying he wasn't going to take it. And he was like, yeah, I just decided that I'm going to do natural and just change my diet. And I'm like, okay, good. I said, what do you eat? He's like, yeah, I'm going to eat some fish today. And I'm like, okay, how did you cook it? He was like, oh, I fried it. So it's like, that's not going to work, daddy. That's not
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
work.
right. Right. The natural way, I mean, it takes a lot of work and a lot of education, a lot of monitoring,
And
a lot
commitment.
of right, a lot of commitment. Yeah, and it's not something that you can just go without very carefully tracking and yeah, there's the danger to that. Not that things can't work for people, but I mean, yeah,
The
especially
test has
for heart disease and for blood pressure. Yeah, the medications, well, these days are so a lot of them very effective and safe and do prolong life. Do
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what are you learning about retention and visit adherence when sites are closer to home and culturally competent?
Um, that's the key. Having something that they can touch, that they can see, that they're not being bussed out to other locations. I actually worked at a facility that were recruiting from the city, recruiting from the south side of Chicago, and bringing them all the way to the suburbs. Patients don't feel safe that way because if you're bringing me all the way to the suburbs, a place that I don't have access to without a vehicle, and most people didn't have a vehicle, they were taking Ubers. What's going to happen when I don't have this access anymore? With my facility, some people can walk, easily accessible to the trains, the buses, and then also being able to see representation, like, okay, oh, this black girl really knows this stuff. She's been working in the industry this long. Okay, and it's right up the street. And I looked her up on Facebook. I get this all the time. I looked you up on Facebook and I see that you're friends with that. So there's always a connection.
Yeah,
And again, with my site, with Next Innovative Clinical Research, it's not a front, because a lot of people will ask, who are you working for? Who's the owner? And I'm like, no, it's me. I'm the owner. This is what I do. And so it's people like to know that they could touch you, that they
right.
have access to you, and that it's not a front, and that I'm not just going to disappear one day if they're in the middle of a study and they have questions. And that retain your patients that way, because they trust you and they
Yeah,
feel comfortable. And that's where the trust comes in. Like, all right, she looks like me. The doctors look like me. Oh, the doctor actually went to school up the street too. Wow, this is great. And that's the thing about having those relationships with the physicians, relationships with the staff, and relationship with the community. Having partnerships with local organizations are extremely important, because if those organizations are like LaToya and Next Innovative Clinical Research is a trusted company, then the people who participate in their community organizations are like, okay, this is a trusted company. So it's not like we're in one day, we're out the next,
hmm,
like we don't care about the community. Like, it's like we're there, we're at events, we show up, you ring our doorbell, somebody's going to answer.
so you're available. There's that
We're
accessibility.
available.
Yeah, yeah, and that really builds confidence in your patients as well. What about the other areas you're serving? Because I know you're in Chicago, you're in Houston. Are you traveling back and forth? Or do you have people you put in place that are managing the other
So
locations?
I used to travel back and forth. Used to travel back and forth a lot, a lot. But I have the most amazing coordinator who has been with me in Houston for almost 3 years now. Have trained her to do more of the managing and overseeing for the newer coordinators coming in. And she actually does our quality when we enter our data into our CTMS, and checking it to make sure that it's matching up with the EDC, and coaching the coordinators on, okay, this is what you need, this is what went wrong, and also coaching the PIs. So she's like absolutely amazing.
Yeah. No, that's great. Right. Because you can't, I mean, especially as you grow to be scalable, you can't be everywhere all at
Absolutely.
once. Yeah. Yeah. So having a good team of trusted managers, who carry on and manage the different locations. Because I
Yes.
understand you're also in LA and St. Thomas, you
Yes,
said?
so LA and St. Thomas will be opening soon. Like I say, even with those sites, I didn't go looking and say, I want to open a site in LA. Yet they reached out to me and say, this is what we're trying to do. And we heard that you're the person to help us. And a lot of offices, physicians, they want to have their own autonomy, where they want to be able to make decisions that they want to make in their own office. They don't want an SMO or a network to come in their office and take over. They want to learn what's needed and then grow through the process, and not have someone just come in their office and take over. So I'm like, okay, sure, I can show you the
Yeah.
ropes. Like we can partner on this study while you learn, and then whatever you get on your own, I'll still coach you. You can just bring me on as a contractor, but you own your site. You do what you need to do for your site, and I'll just be there to hold your hand and guide you through the process, but not necessarily own your site. So right
Okay.
now
You're
they're
really
like a
consulting.
partner. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that's great. And I mean, I think allows you a lot more bandwidth, to serve multiple communities if you're taking on the consulting. And I mean, coming up with the way you do things, maybe the structure of your program, and then expanding that way by
Yep.
teaching others how to implement it.
Yes.
Yeah. Where has it been hardest? Budget negotiations, IRB timelines, finding private practice subspecialties like oncology, and how have you designed around those constraints?
So I would say, even still, the hardest thing is finding studies, getting the attention of the sponsor. Even though, like I said, we've been doing quite well with what we have, still, getting the attention, like, hey, hey, the little ones over here, we have, capabilities of doing XYZ. Because again, a lot of sponsors still like what's big, what's shiny, what's new, and we're still considered new kids on the block. So getting the attention of the sponsor is still one of the hardest things. Regulatory, never. I do regulatory in my sleep.
Yeah.
I remember one time we had 3 studies that I had to start up, and I did all the IRB submissions in one week. It was a Sunday afternoon. Did them all and got all the study startup documents together for the doctors to sign on a Monday, and I did it all on a Sunday because it's what I know and it's what I do, and it's like I know what to look for.
Yeah.
Budget negotiation, I don't do too much anymore. A friend of mine has her own budget and contracts company where she negotiates my budgets and contracts for me. So again, slowly but surely taking things off my plate and letting
Yeah.
other people handle it.
Oh, great. Yeah. So that helps you scale as well. Right.
Yes.
That's great. Now, paint your 10 to 15-year vision. What does an equitable clinical research ecosystem look like in the US cities and territories?
So, for me, and I'm going to speak for me, and then I'm going to speak on Noir Research Collective because we haven't touched on that yet. So, for next innovative clinical research, ideally, my heart and my baby is Chicago because I see how different research is conducted in Chicago than other areas. Like you look at Florida, where research sites are almost on every corner, it's oversaturated there, and it's a little bit different there because they have a lot of private practice physicians. In Chicago, it's so hard to find a private practice physician. In our area where the office is, in Bronzeville, there is one. There is one private practice there, because it's very difficult to embed myself into another doctor's office. That's why I had to have my own facility there. And then in the surrounding suburbs, it's pretty much the same thing where a lot of the networks and the universities have bought up the different private practices. It's safer for the physicians, but they're not able to do
Right.
what they want to do in their practice.
Yeah.
So Northwestern actually put a large um, a clinic. I want to say like maybe 5-10 minutes from my office, and it's huge and it's beautiful. But imagine a private practice mom and pop shop being down the street. They can't compete. They
Right.
can't compete. So in the Chicago area where I see, I want to build 2 research facilities, one on the west side of Chicago, one on the south side of Chicago. And in this facility, the first floor will be physician suites because even though doctors work for larger institutions, a lot of them still want to do private care, and they don't want the overhead. They don't want to, pay for, all this rent when they only need one room. And it's like I want to be able to offer physician suites for the doctors to be able to say I want to see my patients on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so Dr. Smith can have a suite and rent out, our space on those days. So that's on the first floor. The second floor will be all research. We will have imaging there so that patients won't have to go too far to do those things, to get any mammograms or ultrasounds done. And then in the basement, the lower level, we will do phase 1 trials where our patients who have to do PK samples or need to overnight stay, it will be kind of set up like a dorm room where they'll have the capabilities of spending the night, staying for long periods of times, and we'll be able to do those phase 1 trials. So I want to have that on the west side and the south side of Chicago. On top of that, having my training program fully functional and being able to have a pipeline of jobs for people that's coming through the program, whether it be with, one of the universities, whether it be more smaller sites popping up in Chicago or the surrounding suburbs, and having relationships with sponsors so that we can have a pipeline of studies and then a pipeline of employees. Because even though the people that I may work with are from the community, may not have a bachelor's degree or advanced degree, they will have the research knowledge. So if a sponsor needs someone available for data entry or they need someone for recruitment, they can call me, and I was like, hey, these people are fully trained. They have the GCP. I hear the training if they're at a site, if they have to ship out specimen, like they will be fully trained. So that's what I definitely see. We're having a pipeline of studies, pipeline of employees, and 2 sites that are mine that are
Yeah.
built from the
Oh,
ground up.
that's wow. No, that is a very clear vision for the future. I'm excited to, I mean, just hearing you talk about it, yeah, I'm excited to watch you make that a reality.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also want to touch on Noir Research Collective that I am co-founder of with my friends Dr. Lovey Negrin and Danielle Mitchell. Lovey owns a site in Atlanta, Randomized Now, and Danielle Mitchell is the founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. And again, with me, they saw the lack of diverse research sites. It wasn't a lot of them, or it was some here and there, and they were struggling to maintain. So we were like, we have a little bit of an influence. We can go to the sponsor and say, hey, we have these 10, 12 sites across the US. You know, they're up and running, but they need more studies. Or seeing where the gaps are with these sites and helping them with their SOPs, helping them with their site training, helping them find doctors. And also, we have a site masterclass where we teach them how to run a research site. What do you need? You know, do you have what kind of infrastructure do you have? Are you using a CTMS? Are you using paper? What's the difference? What's better? So being
Right.
able to have, being able to coach these sites, like one of our sites, they have a study. It wasn't going, they were recruiting, but the data wasn't quite right. So Dr. Lovey got on the call and was like, okay, here's what you need to do. This is what has to go in here. You have to put this in the EDC, and walking them through the process. And sometimes that's all people need, is to walk people through the process. Because I know when it was my turn
Yeah.
and I was going through the process, I had to make a whole lot of errors before I got it right. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I had to figure it out on my own. So now, instead of making everybody else figure it out on their own, we figure out how to create a network so that we can help
Yeah.
other people not figure it out on their own and be a
Right.
resource for help.
Save them some time and money and frustration, and right, it's
Yes.
being that
Yes.
support, offering the framework and the system. Yeah.
Yes.
You've mentioned partnering with community hospitals to create a hybrid model, large patient base with the speed and warmth of a private site. How would that change timelines and participation?
It would change it a lot. Okay, so again, I worked at University of Chicago and Northwestern for a little spell, so I know how long the process is to get a study started. With that alone, you know, the sponsor's losing time, they're losing money. So if they have a community hospital that they're working with, trying to get partnerships with, Mount Sinai, Jackson Park Hospital, and his Roseland Hospital. So they have pools of patients that are in underserved communities that would like to participate in clinical trials, but they don't have access to clinical trials. So if I'm able to come in to Mount Sinai Hospital and say, hey, I can assist you with getting a study from the sponsor, number one, and starting the study up. I'll do your IRB submissions. I have someone who could do the budgets and contracts. We'll see what you all already have, see what equipment may be needed, may not need, and then actually facilitate these trials. It's easier to work with a community hospital versus one of the universities because they can utilize a central IRB. That's
Mhm.
number one. The budgets and contracts department, they don't have one yet. So I'm assisting with building that. So because I know what that small site field looks like when we're able to navigate, when the sponsor is able to send an email and I don't have to say, oh, you need this department, oh, you need that department, where we can get on it right away and have things done within a month. Like a month is like too long, but we usually negotiate budgets, contracts, have IRB submission, all regulatory done within 2 weeks. So if they're able to get the same results that they want out of the larger institutions in a smaller one and be able to get it started really fast,
Right.
and patients have the access, because the other thing with community hospitals, the parking is way better. So
There's that.
they're going somewhere where
Yeah.
the parking is better. It's a
Yeah.
smaller campus. It's a smaller field, but they may already go to this hospital for, for care. They're more comfortable with being there than going to the larger institutions. But I'm
Right.
actually had a meeting with Northwestern today because I'm trying to show them how everything can work together with the smaller community hospitals, with the smaller research sites, and the larger institutions. How can we make all of this work together and everyone not be on an island on their own? We
Right.
can work together to get this done.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like there's a lot more flexibility and the timelines are shorter. And I mean that, I would think the budgets would also be smaller
Yeah.
in those situations as well. So that makes sense that, yeah, you could create a win-win situation there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What partnerships do you want more of? Are you looking for sponsors willing to activate smaller sites, local physicians willing to serve as PIs, community orgs ready to host education events? What are you needing right now?
So the one thing I have under my belt is doctors. I have plenty of doctors. I have doctors that reach out to me that want to take a training course. They want to be a part of clinical trials. So I have plenty of doctors. I have a lot of partnerships with local organizations in Chicago, but what I don't have is a lot of support from the different sponsors. And again, that's for the studies and then also to support the training course because I'm sure they're working with sites who have access to coordinators that they're working with that they just threw their medical assistant in there and like, okay, this is what I want you to do, but they're not fully trained. They don't have the understanding of what's needed because I was once just thrown into the fire. That's how I figured it out, and that's how I know I don't like it. So I'm
Right,
sure everyone
right.
else that's been thrown into the fire don't like it too. So sponsors are the first ones to identify, yeah, that coordinator isn't properly trained, and they have to go through and do the training. But I know firsthand that the sponsor isn't always the best to do the training because a lot of them haven't worked at the site level. They're just repeating the protocol and say this is what you need to do. But sometimes you need someone to explain that's been through it to say, all right, here's why you do it, here's how you do it, and here's an easier process, and make them think a little bit differently of why it's done.
Yeah. And for listeners, who should raise their hand? Like potential participants, physicians, hospitals, sponsors, and what's their best first step?
Well, the sponsors, of course, should be the first ones to raise their hand. And their first step is to email me, LaToya.Hinton at nexticr.com. And they can reach out to me. I'm always available on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn junkie. Always on there looking to see what opportunities are out there or what new roles my friends are getting into because I love being able to have that community
Yeah.
of researchers because that's one thing I didn't have when I was, along my journey. I didn't have any friends in research and it was just me. And I would talk to my grandmother about what I'm doing and she's like, I don't know anything about that.
No, I agree. LinkedIn is fabulous for connecting with people and finding um, those audience members or partners that you're looking in different places. I love it for
Yeah.
podcast guests. So it's great. Well, LaToya, thank you for sharing your mission and the work you're doing to bring clinical research into underserved communities. What you're up to is very inspiring. And again, remind listeners, do you have a website that they could find out more on?
Yes. Our website is nexticr.com.
And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation, please follow and subscribe to Industry Ignited on your favorite podcast platform. And until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep igniting industry.